Welcome to Griefspace, where we create space for honest conversations about grief and the many ways it shapes our lives. And today we're talking about something that isn't discussed nearly enough, and it's called cumulative grief. Many people can imagine losing one loved one, but what happens when loss just keeps arriving in many forms? My guest, Melissa Nelson, she's lived through a decade marked by repeated losses. And today she's helping us understand not only what that was like, but what she learned along the way. Melissa, welcome to our
Thank
podcast.
you. Hi.
I am so glad to have you as my guest. I was looking for someone who had been through a lot of losses, and you were suggested. And after talking to you the other day, and I can definitely understand why.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Melissa?
First of all, the lady that suggests you, Sherry, we share a very special loss. Her husband was one of my very best friends, and he, oddly enough, carried me through a lot of the grief I had been through before. So losing him was a huge loss, kind of like not only losing somebody that you deeply cared about, but also like, who's going to get me through him? He got me through the
Right.
other things. So that's how I came to know her, and that's how I came to be here. So
Would you say that that was one loss that changed a lot in your life?
he was such a wonderful person. Just before Andy got sick, I had a cousin that was dying of cancer, and Andy was always there for him. So,
Oh,
and he was actually diagnosed, Andy was diagnosed with cancer around the same time my sister died. So it was just sort of a double whammy. The whole,
yeah.
like you were talking about a cumulative grief, that was kind of like, the mountaintop where it's like I either had to decide after Andy died, do I just fall off or do I plateau and find a new way?
Was there ever a point where you thought, I don't know if I could survive another
Yeah,
loss?
and honestly, I have to be honest, my mother, being the fact that I take care of my 91-year-old mother, that's a big
Mm.
reason that I'm still here. And I'm not saying I'm not going to be here when something happens to her because I've kind of prepared for that. You always have to have something that gets you through. One thing I did after he died was I changed jobs. Not companies, just the role. I realized I wasn't satisfied what I was doing and I couldn't do it and grieve all the grief I had to grieve because there'd been like 5 losses in the 4 years I had been doing that job, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. You know, when
Loss puts a different lens on life, doesn't it?
yeah, it does, and it also you get to a point where you start to look at all that loss. Like, do I even dare tell somebody? What do they think? And I can't put myself in that place because we don't have a control over loss, and we don't have any control over what other people think about your loss. I know she didn't mean to, but the first thing one of my coworkers said was, "Well, that he didn't pick a very good time to die." Then she kind of shut herself, like, "Oh," it was just like it came out, but it was also kind of a,
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah, people try to say the right thing,
yeah.
and
Sometimes that's another thing. Sometimes when I tell other people that are helping somebody, I'm like, there's not a right or wrong thing to say. You
Mhm.
just listen. You just be there. Sometimes you just hug
Right,
them. You
right.
know.
I try to tell my clients not to be too judgmental on the words that are said to them
Yeah.
because sometimes it's the motive behind it. They want to be helpful,
Yeah.
but we have to be really forgiving a lot,
Yes,
don't
we do. And we have to, like you say, realize it comes from a nice place. It comes from a place of love and caring,
it does.
and there's
It
no
does.
right thing to say to somebody that's grieving. There isn't. There's no one magic pill that's going to make it all better.
One of the things I found fascinating, Missy, when we first talked, was when you described forgetting your friend had died. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I knew somewhere in my head that he had died. And I went in to wish him happy birthday and I realized he had gone. And I realized that I knew that somewhere inside of me, but I had forgot it or I just didn't have the ability to deal with it or yeah, it was I think that might just be the cumulative of everybody. Just okay, so one more I can't take it right now.
It could be your brain was on overload, and
Yeah.
it's also there's also a component of your brain that's rebuilding thousands of neural
Yeah.
pathways and predictions.
Yeah.
And sometimes our brains just continue searching long after our hearts know the
Yeah.
truth. Our brains are a little slower to catch on
Yeah.
sometimes.
And I don't know. I guess I just wanted to think that he was somewhere living happily ever after, and that's why I hadn't heard from him. And
Right.
so, yeah, that was very, very strange. It made me sad that I had that reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. It probably triggered you a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I was like, I've tried to be easy on myself over it and realize,
Right.
yeah, maybe that's
You know,
the cumulative grief. You can only hold so much of it.
that's right. There's also complicated grief, Melissa. Complicated grief has layers of complexities to it. And sometimes when we grieve the loss, we have anger attached to that loss.
Hmm. And I had a
Mm,
close friend from college. One of the other times I was really angry over a death, he committed suicide, and that made me angry. Like,
mhm.
until I found out more of the reasons he did it and more where his head was at the time. And then I wasn't so angry. I understood it, and I understood that in his own way, he thought he was doing everybody a favor.
Yeah, sometimes when we increase our scope,
Yeah.
it helps us to be more forgiving and more understanding that people are multi-layered. People are complex.
It's funny
We're,
how we
we're
allow ourselves to be complex and multi-layered, but sometimes we forget that other people are too.
exactly. Yeah, grief and anger can coexist together. Grief and love can coexist together in the
Yeah.
first place.
I read somewhere that, grief is just the price you pay for love. Sometimes, it's the final price you pay for love. And if you didn't love a person, it wouldn't hurt like it does. And
Right.
it's just sometimes
I,
the price we have to pay sometimes, and everybody grieves.
yeah.
And I also learned I was very judgmental about how other people handled my grief, especially in the middle of it. Like I told you, I had someone die in 2014, my friend, and then my brothers were both killed in the same car accident in 2016. I had a friend die in 2018. My sister died in 2019. My cousin died in 2020, and then Andy died. So it was just boom, 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 boom. So, and I would get
So,
angry with people sometimes because they didn't handle my grief. There's a look that people sometimes get, and they don't
mhm,
mean it. It's just that sort of like almost panicky. I'm going to put this wall up because I don't know what to do. And I noticed
yes.
the more and more, and then I would get angry with, well, why would they were so helpful when my brothers died? Why aren't they here when my sister died? Kind of
Mhm.
a lot of different little things. And you just have to learn that those aren't horrible things to feel. It's just your mind kind of working everything out. You
Right.
know.
It's true. Grief is sort of looked upon as a shadow,
Yeah.
but hey, when you know how to help people, and
Hmm.
and I do, and when you've been through things yourself, there gets to be a point you can't resist that any longer. Hey, what did someone do that you'll never forget? Because it actually helped. People say things that don't help.
Yeah.
They're not helpful. They do things that are not helpful. But once in a great while, you'll person that does something um that they were helpful.
Well, that would actually be Andy. It was like one time he was in D.C. and I was mad about. I had dated right after my brothers died. Well, while my brothers died, I was dating a man who literally put a time limit on my grief, and I don't think he meant to. But my brothers were killed, both of them, in an accident in June of 2016. And at Christmas time, I kept saying, I'm not ready to celebrate Christmas.
Sure.
I'd been going back. My mom was still living in Michigan, and there was a trial. We were getting ready for a trial because the girl was found negligent because she was texting and she crossed the line and she was speeding and she crossed the line, hit my brother's head on, killed them both. And somebody came up behind and hit him from behind. So they had been squashed between the two. So there was this big trial, and I was back and forth in Michigan. And my ex boyfriend, he just decided Christmas time was a great time for me to be over it and be cheerful. It was the first
Yeah.
holiday without them, and I kept telling him, I can't do this. And he kind of forced me into it. And I remember having a literal nervous breakdown, and just having to leave the party and go to another room and just shake. I wasn't crying because I didn't cry for a long time after my brothers died. And then but I was shaking. And then we ended up breaking up not long after that. And oddly enough, the first time I cried, I guess it's somebody else that did something, but I'm always kind of resistant because it was Joe Biden's book. He wrote a book called Promise Me Dad about his son's death. And I always like, oh, people think you're getting politics if you're talking about that, but it had
Well,
nothing to do with politics. It was his
yeah,
experience in
that's
grief.
very separate.
Yeah, so I read the whole book in like a day. And the only time I kept having to stop because I couldn't stop crying. And it was felt so good to cry because it was like a year later and I had not cried because I just didn't have time. I mean, I cried the day they died, and I cried when I was in the hospital and they wouldn't let me find my brother's bodies because of HIPAA laws. But after that, I hadn't cried for like a year, and I just sat down.
You have so many layers of losses.
Yeah,
I'm sure the audience hears already what is she going to say next. Many of them, the listeners too, have had losses.
yeah.
And how did you get through your workday?
That wasn't always easy. That was a lot of. That was a very understanding manager who would just like do what you can. She let me change jobs because the other job was much less work. It had 4 weeks a year that were very stressful, but the rest of the time was building up to those 4 weeks. So I could work but I could walk away and take a walk, or I could breathe, or whatever I needed to do. And I also started ballroom dancing, which for
Nice.
45 minutes a week. That's all I think about, and
Mhm.
it's a little fantasy world, and I'm a little princess dancer.
Yeah,
So
that's excellent. And that's excellent.
yeah, but
That's exactly what I would
yeah.
recommend. I would recommend that to your leadership at work
Mm-hmm.
to find something flexible and something easier, and then an extracurricular
Yeah.
activity
Well, it's a
that's
great one
something
because
new.
you have to think about what you're doing, but you're creating, but your mind has to be only on that for those a time, and I have a wonderful dance instructor who knows everything, and he's helped me do some dedication dances. I actually did one to Andy, which is going back to what I started, where he was the one. When I broke up with my boyfriend after about a year later after that, I was visiting Andy in DC while he was there for work, and I was complaining about him, and Andy's like, you know what you need to do? I'm like, what? He's like, you just need to dance, because I had just started dancing. I said, I've been doing dancing in class. He's like, no, here, right now. And we got up on this statue, and
Absolutely
we just
right.
danced, because Andy was great. He was still, before he was married to Sherry, he had been with another lady who actually died of the same cancer he did. So he knew all
And
about grief, and his mother had died, and he knew all about what I was going through. And he's like, sometimes you just got to dance. And so we danced. And then years later, I did a dedication routine to the Garth Brooks song "The Dance," and that was my dedication to Andy. Because if I hadn't have known him, even though I lost him, and that was very sad, I would have
Melissa,
dance.
you're so resilient because you found ways yourself to not be stuck.
Yeah,
Some people can't. They need extra help.
yeah.
But I applaud you, Melissa, because
Thank you.
you are not masking, you are not avoiding your loss. You're inserting something good to help your brain, look for a different prediction, or it's real healthy for you to do something new and fun and enjoyable like that. You're not forgetting your loss. You're actually talking about it to help people.
Yeah. Well, grief whisperers, my mom calls me.
They call you the grief
Yes, my
whisperer.
mom calls me because a lot of times she came from, she's 91, so she came from a different generation where you experience loss differently. And she lost three or four of her kids. And I don't know, honestly, that woman amazes me that she got through her own losses. My dad died in 2009, which was probably our first loss. He died of a heart attack, but that was kind of, I don't know, I was prepared for that because he'd had four heart attacks in 10 years. And so being able to watch him finally go was like, it's okay, daddy. And so she went through that. Then she lost both my brothers. And my one brother was autistic, so he couldn't take care of himself. So she had been his caretaker his whole life, and he was 59. And then my brother who died with them, he came back after my father died and lived with them and took care of my mom and my other brother. So I kind of had to take over that role, and then we brought her out here. And then my sister died. Her reaction when my sister died was very different. She just kind of, like, I remember she just, oh, okay. Because we'd seen her in the hospital the day before, and I said, Mom, Cindy passed away overnight. Oh, okay. Well, I can't find a dog. I think he got out. My aunt, oddly enough, thank God, my aunt was out here already. She was in Utah, but she was out visiting when my sister died. And I guess she just cried, and my aunt went into the room to see if she was okay, and she said, Cindy died. Like the whole day, it didn't hit
Yeah,
her.
our brains are amazing.
Yeah.
They're always trying to put us in safety mode, and we are always trying to be in safety mode.
Yeah.
And it knows how much we can handle.
That's the biggest thing I have learned is that my brain is smarter than I am.
Mm.
It really is.
Yeah.
Even with this hand injury, which I can't remember how much I told you, but it was an electrocution that happened 7 months after my brother died. And if all the injuries they were delayed nerve injuries that didn't come back for years, which I guess is really common. But I sometimes I think my brain, because I'm like, if I was going through all this at that time, it would have been too much to go through the
Yeah.
grief and the visits to my mom and the legal stuff and this rehab in my hand. So I thank my brain for that.
There's so many different types of losses. You had losses to death, and you've had losses of relationship,
Yeah,
and you've had losses of your health.
yeah.
And if someone is listening feels like life just keeps handing them one loss after another, what would you want them to hear today?
Just keep moving. There's a quote. It's not about what life gives you, it's about how you handle what life gives you, is basically paraphrasing. Nobody's going to beat you up more than life. And it's
Mhm.
not about what life throws at you, it's about how you pick it up and how you handle it and how you move forward. But sometimes it's just a simple mantra, a simple quote that somebody had
Mhm.
said. Somebody had wrote that the loss of a sibling, like they compared it to all your different losses, and it said when you lose your parents, you lose your past. When you lose a husband, you lose your present. When you lose your children, you lose your future. But when you lose a sibling, you lose all three. And I just remind myself of that when I'm feeling a little too sad about it. That was a huge loss, And when I see somebody lost a sibling, I always say, this is going to be different than any loss you've ever
Mhm.
experienced. If you need to talk, I'm here. I think what you do is amazing because I think that grief is the one thing our society doesn't do well at all. We just don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
It seems dark and it seems unattainable
Yeah.
to understand. It seems like anything you do isn't correct, and it seems secret, which is the saddest part.
Yeah, that's the part that hurts the most is feeling
Mhm.
like everybody's heard it before and you have to keep those
Right.
feelings to yourself.
That is part of my pearls method, and the A stands for acknowledgement.
Mhm.
And we go through some of the past things really early in the program because we need to say goodbye to some of these
Yeah.
things. It's not easy to share some of these personal things, and I don't take that lightly that you have been willing to share these with the world to show them that it is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible to live after a loss, and it's okay to cry, and it's also okay not to cry. One of the things I took away from today's conversation is that cumulative grief doesn't simply add sorrow. It changes us and it stretches our capacity to love, to hurt, to adapt, and sometimes discover strengths we never imagined we had, like Melissa. If today's conversation with her reminded you that you're carrying more than one loss, I hope you can know that you're not alone. Thank you for joining us today in Griefspace, and until next video, I'm here to help you become the boss of your loss.